Good morning, Year 9, and welcome back to another week of home learning. Now, today you're going to need in front of you the paragraph that you wrote in Friday's lesson. So if you can find that and grab a pen or some highlighters that you can label with, then we're ready to get started. Okay, once you've got those, we're going to have a look at what we need to do when we're self-assessing a piece of creative writing. So I'm going to talk you through the process that your teachers go through when we're assessing your work, and also help you to identify and critically read over your work so that you can think about ways you can improve and refine your writing. Now, at the end of the lesson today, we're going to want you to redraft that paragraph in a better form, acting on your targets, ready for our lesson on Friday, when that paragraph will be the first paragraph in your extended piece of creative writing that you're going to produce on GCSE Pod. Okay, and these are the skills that we want you to think about as you're writing each paragraph in your writing, really drilling down into the detail and thinking about how you can structure your writing carefully and really show us the best of your creativity, okay? So we're going to have a look at this piece. It's a grade 4 piece, so that's a mid-range piece. It's a good piece of writing. There's plenty of strong elements in here, but there's also some work that could be done to make it a really excellent piece of writing. So we're going to read it through first of all. As we read it, I'd like you to look at what I've highlighted in yellow, the strengths, and what I've highlighted in pink, the targets, and think, as I'm reading it to you, why I might have done that. The woods seclude me from the rest of the world. I'm on my own with nobody else in sight, just nature and only nature. I'm not alone though. The sounds of nature invite me. I'm part of nature for the duration of the hike. There are no roads, buildings, or any type of infrastructure. There is only a dirt path, leading me through the wild and finally to my destination, the top of the mountain. The hike starts out from a car park next to a highly travelled road. Humans are present, but before going too far, evidence of people does not exist, and cars can no longer be heard. There is only one dirt path, and that's all. This is where I start to experience the presence of nature. At first, nature has to adjust to my presence. The squirrels scatter away as I walk towards them and scurry up the trees. The birds silence their chirping simultaneously. Nature is hiding and watching, as an outsider is near. But it isn't long before nature continues what it is doing. Now I'm accepted and can continue on my journey. Okay, so let's take a look at this first section. I've highlighted the word seclude. It's a really great verb. And I've highlighted this because I think this is really appropriate vocabulary. I think it's very effective and it does the job really well. So really wise vocabulary choice there. I've then got a section that I've highlighted in pink. I'm on my own with nobody else in sight, just nature and only nature. Now, the reason I've highlighted this in pink is because I feel it's a little bit, what's the word? Lazy, actually, I think. Because what we've got here is an assumption that I know as the reader what kind of nature that this person is seeing. I think what we could do with here is a little less tell and a little bit more show. So I'm going to write here as a target, more detailed description needed. Because this is an opportunity at the opening of your piece to really set the scene, okay? So if we're thinking about nature, are we thinking about trees, birds, the wind, the temperature? Have we got a sense of the leaves, the colour of the leaves? I think we could do a lot more here with colour and texture and bring this scene to life a little bit. A little bit of show needed. Okay. There's quite a nice piece of personification here, which is something that you could perhaps build on in this introduction. So there's good use of personification like that. I'm part of the nature of the duration of the hike. There are no roads, buildings, or any type of infrastructure. Again, this is really nice use of industrial language. So we've got this sense of instantly with that word infrastructure. This kind of builds in a great contrast, doesn't it? the idea of industry, of metals, of man-made structures compared to nature. And this is really nice and would be even better if there was a lovely contrast earlier on here. There is only a dirt path leading me through the wild and finally to my destination, the top of the mountain. Now I think this is really interesting, this small dirt path and this getting through the wild, but I think we're missing an opportunity to build a little tension here. So could you build tension or anticipation here? Because by perhaps adding a little more detail here, we could really create a tone. So this dirt path, is it framed by stinging nettles and thorns? Is it obscured and lost in places? Is it overgrown? Is it well trodden, this dirt path? Even though it is dirt, is it well trodden? Have many people been here before? We've also got this word wild, this kind of really lovely abstract noun, the wild. And I think it would be quite helpful here to have a little bit more about what this wildness is. Is it brambles and thorns? Is it weeds? Is it rock faces? Is it twists and turns? Could there be a little bit more detail here? I also quite like the ending here. I like how this student has used a colon to really sort of separate out and demonstrate, look, this is the mission, this is the aim, the top of the mountain. But perhaps that could again have a little bit more drama. The summit, the prize, perhaps using a metaphor, the dream, yeah? So there's quite a bit that we could do here that could add a little bit more detail and actually instantly at the beginning of this piece of writing create a sense of place and time and mood. Now, depending on your piece of writing, you might want to create a real sense of excitement and anticipation and build up, or you might want to create a sense of fear and isolation. You may want to convey a sense of this kind of a spiritual journey, a sense of feeling calm and tranquil and comforted by the sort of solitude and seclusion. But whatever you decide to do, you've got to reflect that in the natural world around you. Just saying nature is not going to do enough to create that sense of mood. If we move on here, there's quite a nice shift in time where we're taking us to the beginning of the journey. That works quite well. But then we have quite a clunky sentence here, which doesn't particularly make sense. It seems quite disjointed. There's lots of commas, but it doesn't really take us somewhere. We have to kind of read that quite carefully. And it could probably be written to be far more concise here. So we could have something like, humans are present, but as soon as one gets a certain way from the car park, they dissipate. And it is almost as if we're in another world, another planet, a place untouched by human hands. I feel that there could be something a little bit more dramatic here in that contrast. Now, I've put this with pink down the side because for me, this is becoming a little bit repetitive. We've got the repetition of the dirt path, which could be said to create more drama, but it's not really adding anything to what we've said before. We've also got this kind of, again, quite clumsy contrast. This is when I start to experience the presence of nature. At first, nature has to adjust to my presence. And here again, I think we need to maybe create a little bit of mood and tension here. This is really nice because we could slow down time quite considerably here and really notice the world around our narrator. Okay, we've got a first person narrator here. They could be really taking us through everything about them and really, really slow it down. And we could then notice, and I think again, this idea of showing us a little bit more detail, the way that nature is adjusting to our presence. Now the student starts to do this here. We have the squirrels scattering away. It's quite a nice use of sibilance there. As I walk towards them and scurry up the trees. The birds silence their chirping simultaneously. Again, that's quite a nice sentence there. We get that sense of real silence and sort of waiting and suspense. Nice. And a nice continuation of this kind of extended use of personification, this extended metaphor, works really well. That idea of man being an intruder in this secret natural world is really nice. And then we've got this idea of acceptance and becoming one with the place. And I really like this idea of this kind of unity. And that this journey sort of transforming them almost. It's actually a very sophisticated idea. And it's something that we could take a little further, perhaps. So we've got the startings of a really good piece of writing, some really nice idea. This idea of man versus nature, this idea of sort of becoming part of the world as you go on this journey. It's not just a journey to the top of the mountain, it's a journey of connection and becoming part of the natural world. But there could be more done here to get a little bit more description and to make it a little bit more vivid. So if I was going to assess this, I would say that there are some really great vocabulary choices. I also think some really structurally interesting ideas. So the use of contrast and this idea of personifying nature is really, really interesting, okay? Now, in terms of targets, I would say that in places, the sentence structures here are a little bit clunky. We've got places where we could perhaps have a semicolon instead of a full stop. We've also got places here where the sentences seem a little incomplete, and when we read them back, they don't perhaps make as much sense as we would like them to do. So I would give some advice and say, take care with sentence structures and to really make sure that when you read them over that they make sense. And I would also say, and this is probably the most important piece of advice for this student, that don't be afraid to develop more detail in your description. And I think a piece of advice I would give here is to slow down and unpick a moment. Somebody once said to me that words are a little bit like paint and a paintbrush, and that when you're writing a piece of description, you've got to make sure that you're using all of the palette, the different colours, the different textures, that you're thinking about scale and perspective, and that you're really painting a scene that's vivid and that seems almost real. Okay, and I think we've got an opportunity here to make this piece even more convincing. So I'd like you to think about what we've just done with these two paragraphs here and to reflect on your paragraph. I'd like you to identify at least 2 strengths, at least 2, and at least 2 targets for improvement. You can do more if you like. As a first round, I want you to do as we've done today. I want you to read your work through really objectively, almost as if it was somebody else's work. What do you like about it? Where do you think perhaps you've rushed? Are there any bits that you think actually that's not reading very well out loud? You could ask a family member to read it for you and say, does this make sense to you? Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you think I could add more detail? Do you know where I am? And really think about whether there are opportunities for you to add more detail and development into your writing, okay? What you then need to do is take your paragraph and you need to develop and extend it. You need to improve it. You need to rewrite it if you want to. You can start again. You can restructure the paragraph. That's the whole point of this exercise, is to really help you to create a paragraph that you're really pleased with and that you think is a really great opening to a piece of creative descriptive writing. And then what we're going to do on Friday is you're going to take that second draft as a starting point. You're going to type that up into GCSE Pod, and then you're going to follow that with 2 to 3 further paragraphs to really extend and develop that description. Now, if you need more help with that, you can look back to our video from earlier last week, where you can see ideas for different paragraphs. But I'm hoping that you spent some time planning and thinking about where you're going. And when it comes to Friday's lesson, you'll have a really great opening paragraph and you'll have some ideas about where you want to go. Okay? So today you need to assess your work, as it says on Show My Homework, identify strengths and targets. You need to redraft your paragraph, and then on Friday you need to write an extended response on GCSE Pod. You could, if you want to today, write your full draft so that you've got a rough draft ready to go on Friday, and that when you get to Friday's lesson you've got a place to start and you can think about improving and building on what you've done in Friday's lesson and using some of these assessment skills. Okay, so any problems at all, send a message to your teacher. Really good luck with this, and we look forward to reading your writing on Friday.